Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk a little bit of NBA predictions as the offseason, preseason starts to go ahead and wrap up. Real meaningful basketball is being played October 22nd. I am trying to finalize my NBA predictions. I think the deadline I'm going to set for myself when I'm going to drop my full season predictions video, which is standings, it's awards, it's who wins the NBA Finals, everything like that, should be coming out October 15th, which is an exact week before the season begins. So I'm running out of time, and I think I've got a lot of stuff finalized, specifically with like awards and how I think the NBA Finals and stuff are going to play out. But in terms of the standings, who's going to finish where, I've got no idea really in either conference. So I want to talk about why it feels so hard to predict the NBA this season, specifically where teams land. I know there are the favorites for the awards, like there are some awards where there are massive favorites and teams are heavily favored to win their conferences, whatever. But in terms of everybody else, it's all up in the air. I'll start off with the Western Conference. I feel like most people presume the Thunder are going to repeat as the 1 seed out there. That's my belief. I'll go ahead and spoil that right away. Not that I think anybody is surprised. I'm a Thunder fan, but I don't think it's really just bias that's playing the part in that. They're the favorites to do so. Everybody's picking them. They were the 1 seed last year, and nobody's going to disagree that they got better. They've got young talent. They've got a top 5 player. Everything you need to repeat as a 1 seed. Plus, they're a young team that fell a bit short of their expectations for themselves in the playoffs last year, losing in the second round. So they're extremely hungry. They're not one of those teams that's just going to coast throughout the regular season. They're going to gun for that 1 seed. They're not going to sit guys. So I think it makes a ton of sense that the Thunder are most people's pick to grab the 1 seed. But beyond that, I feel like there's really no consensus whatsoever. There are a few teams that are more so in that conversation, but nobody is like solidified at that 2 spot. And I think that goes all the way down to like the 12 spot in the Western Conference. I've seen so many combinations of those teams. It's ridiculous. So let's talk about some candidates to finish up there towards the top of the standings as well. In the West, the teams I think most people are going to talk about are like the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, and the Mavericks. I feel like those are the 3 squads that everybody imagines will probably have pretty good regular seasons. The Wolves finished as the 3 seed last year, the Nuggets as the 2, but in my opinion, I think both teams got a little bit worse. With the Nuggets, they lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was huge for them last year as a defender, as a reliable shooter, just an integral part to the cohesion of that Nuggets team, and so I feel like they're going to take a bit of a step back, but at the same time, they still have Nikola Jokic, they still have Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. The young talent is questionable, but if some guys pop, they could really still perform highly in the regular season. And anytime you have Nikola Jokic, you're going to be a monster of a regular season team. Even a few years back when Nikola Jokic was fighting for his life without any of his co-stars, the Nuggets went out there and grabbed the 6 seed, 48 wins. So he is pretty much an automatic 48 to 50 wins this year with having more health. I imagine they'll be right around that. And this year, 50 wins got you the 5 seed. So maybe they'll be a little bit more around that range, but I cannot get it out of my head that the Nuggets are still going to be highly competitive, even if they aren't the favorites in the Western Conference like they were last year. They feel like an obvious candidate to finish up here in the standings, but so did the Wolves, because while I do think they got a little bit worse with the trade, and I think there is going to be some gelling that has to go on with Julius Randle, if they do end up gelling, there is a world where they perform right around the same in the regular season, or at least enough to go ahead and grab the 2 seed, even if it's not the 56 wins they got last year, because Ant's going to take a step up. I think Naz Reid with more minutes is going to be highly impactful. Still going to be an otherworldly defense with Jaden McDaniels and Rudy Gobert. I'm interested to see what like Rob Dillingham does, and Dante DiVincenzo adds some great shooting that could elevate the offense. There are reasons to expect that the Wolves can again be in that conversation for the 2 or 3 seed. Then you have Dallas, who really rocketed up the standings after the trade deadline last year. The second that mark passed, they're one of the best teams in the Western Conference and got themselves all the way up to the 5 seed, almost made it to the 4, of course, made the NBA Finals. And if Luke and Kyrie are healthy for a full season with the supporting cast, with the addition of Klay Thompson, you have to imagine they are also capable of grabbing a 2, 3, or a 4 seed out there in the West. So those are 3 teams that are immediately coming to mind for me, and that's even without considering some of the wild cards that could potentially take big jumps too. Like, what if the Grizzlies are right back up in that conversation again after a healthier season is ahead of them? I mean, I do worry about some of the injuries that are already plaguing them going into the season, like JJ Jackson's dealing with something. There's stuff going on with a number of other players that are key contributors to the roster. Zach Edey dealt with some injury in the summer league. Ja Morant left his first preseason game with an ankle injury. It's something I think that will bother him, but there's a part of me that's starting to think the Grizzlies are just cursed and are just a bad health team. But if they're all able to stay on the court, this feels like they can again be a juggernaut squad out there in the Western Conference. They've got 3 legitimate all-star level players in Ja, who's an all-NBA level player, Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane. They have another DPOY alongside Triple J and Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, Zach Edey, Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson. It's a really fun team over there in Memphis, so I don't want to count them out, and I feel like if they really catch fire, if they click from day one, there's a chance they're also in the conversation for one of those top 4 seeds in the Western Conference. Maybe the Kings put things together with the DeMar DeRozan trade. I just watched their first preseason game. DeRozan was insane. He was perfect from the field. He was knocking down mid-range jumpers. He knocked down a 3, was really feeling like he was integrated decently into the offense already, and it's their first preseason game, so that's exciting to see. They were just a top 3 seed a few years ago. Could they replicate that feat with a team that now has that extra scoring punch, especially because the defense was pretty solid down the stretch of last year? Like the Phoenix Suns, adding Tyus Jones. I'm not a believer in their defense at all, but if they stay healthy and that offense is as potent as it can be and Budenholzer gets them to defend at least a little bit, maybe they're up there in that conversation. The Pelicans, if they can stay healthy, they were right there for the top 4 seeds throughout a lot of last season, but then of course they dealt with the injuries that they typically do. They fell down. Could they make things happen, especially with the DeJounte Murray acquisition? Could the Lakers somehow make some noise if LeBron and AD are really cooking, they're staying healthy, and this JJ Redick system is just amazing the way that it seemed like it could be in their first preseason game? The Clippers do still have Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. Maybe they put it together and they are fighting for a top 6 seed if they keep guys healthy. The Warriors, I'm not the biggest believer in the team right now, but they do still have Steph Curry and Draymond Green. They just shot the lights out of the ball against the Kings in that first preseason game I talked about. The Rockets, a lot of people think they could take a jump, and they had some good moments against the Thunder in that first preseason game that they played against each other. Like, there are a lot of very competent teams in the Western Conference. Even the Spurs with like Chris Paul and Wemby, they're not going to fight for a top 4 spot or a top 6 spot, but I could see them making some noise right around the play-in tournament because of how good Wemby could be, and now that he's got a real point guard, they've got Vassell and Keldon Johnson. It's a lot of talented teams out there in the Western Conference, but yet only 10 of them can make it. So there is a possibility that you have a team like the Rockets, who do feel like they're extremely deep with a great defense, that doesn't make it into the play-in. The Warriors, if things don't click alongside Steph Curry, I think they could be outside the play-in. If the Clippers deal with even one significant injury, they could fall out of that mix. Maybe the Grizzlies continue to deal with injuries. The Kings thing doesn't really click the way that we hope it does. The Pelicans, they deal with injuries the way that they typically do. The Lakers, if LeBron or AD go down for even like 20, 30 games, they're in danger of falling into that play-in as well. There are so many teams that I could see being right up there around that 5 to 6 range, but also if one thing goes wrong, falling to like the 12 seed in the Western Conference. It is a slippery slope. I think it's going to be very similar to last year, where you've got the Mavericks that had 50 wins, and then 49 for the Suns, and 47 for the Lakers, and 49 for the Pelicans, and 46 for the Kings. Like, the separation between the 6-seeded Suns and the 11-seeded Rockets was 8 games, which is not very much. And if you go up to the 10-seeded Warriors, the separation between them and the 5-seeded Mavericks is 4 games. The 4-seeded Clippers was 5 games of separation. It is going to be very, very packed in that middle, if you ask me. I think, again, the Thunder will be pretty clearly the 1 seed. I think they'll not run away with it, but they'll have a decently comfortable lead. But everything else is very up in the air, with a lot of teams seemingly improving, but there are still question marks, and some of the top squads having big question marks of their own and seemingly declining. And of course, that doesn't even bring up the conversation of who's going to win the Western Conference. Everybody's got their favorites. I'm not going to get too much into that. There are a lot of teams that I could see really making a push in the West if things click. We'll talk about that when I get to my season predictions. But yeah, the standings are all over the place. I've got no idea how to predict it. There are going to be a couple of franchises that are devastated by this year's results, because at least 2 teams of the Thunder, Nuggets, Timberwolves, Clippers, Mavericks, Suns, Lakers, Pelicans, Kings, Warriors, Rockets, and Grizzlies are not making the playoffs. And a lot of those teams are more likely than others, but there are going to be 2 teams in that bunch that are extremely disappointed. There might be more, but very disappointed by the fact that they don't even make the play-in tournament, never mind like losing it and don't make the playoffs, because 4 of those teams aren't making the playoffs. It's kind of crazy. And then over in the Eastern Conference, you've got the Boston Celtics, who are pretty much going to be up there. You know, you've got the Knicks, who made a couple of big acquisitions. They're going to be really good. The Sixers, I think, will have an amazing season. I love the PG acquisition. They've got some more depth now. If they can keep Embiid healthy, I mean, last year he didn't play that much and they still won 47 games. Imagine what they could do if he stays in the court for a lot more contests. The Bucks, I'm hopeful for a Dame bounce back, and they still have Giannis and Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton. I like some of their additions too. Cavaliers kept Donovan Mitchell, and they've been a consistent 50 to 48 win team. Like, they won 48 games last year, and they were decimated by injuries, one of the most injured teams in the league. So all those teams feel like they could be up there in the conversation for the top spots. But then there's also like the Magic, who were just a 5 seed. They were hovering right around the 2 seed, 3 seed, 4 seed for a lot of the season. And they added KCP. I think they're going to get better. They're going to gun for that because they are a young team. They've got a high floor, feels like most nights, because of that defense. If Paolo and Franz both take leaps, this could be a top 3 seeded squad. Same thing with the Pacers, a full year now with Pascal Siakam in a Pacer uniform. And at the beginning of the season, this team was wrecking everybody because Tyrese Haliburton was putting up like 27 points and 12 dimes. Now, I don't know if he's going to quite replicate that, but I think we're going to see a lot more of a similar Haliburton to those games than we will see a similar Haliburton to the games at the end of the season when he was dealing with injuries, when he tried to rush himself back, and he never quite looked like himself. So if we get the old Tyrese back, plus that Siakam, plus the development from the young guys, the team that made a run to the conference finals with like Andrew Nembhard getting better, that's a scary team. The Miami Heat, they're letting Bam Adebayo shoot threes now. That's huge. They've still got Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler could be in for a revenge season. Like, we haven't seen what Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero can look like as a backcourt for a majority of the year. There are a lot of great teams out east too, and I feel pretty confident that like the Celtics are probably going to be up there towards the 1 seed. I think the Knicks could maybe push for that with the Porzingis injury to the Celtics to start the year, but like they're going to be 2 of the top seeds. The Sixers feel like they should be, but again, there's the injury bug. The Bucks feel like they should be as well, but that's always a concern with them too. And what if Dame doesn't bounce back? How much do like the Magic, the Pacers, the Cavs push themselves up? Really beyond the top 8, it's kind of nothing, but even that is, kind of interesting. Could like the Hornets finally break through and make the play-in? Could the Hawks break through and make the play-in? Or I guess not break through because they were the 10 seed last year, but can they kind of maintain that spot? The Raptors, I feel like potentially have a chance. They've got a lot of interesting talent. There's just a lot that is very up in the air, it feels like, with the current NBA. I feel pretty good that the 8 teams from the East last year that were in the playoffs are again going to be the playoff teams, but that's pretty rare that actually happens. So it feels like somebody probably is going to fall out. I don't know who it would be, but we'll have to wait and see. It does feel like an injury could decide that if it is going to happen. And then over in the Western Conference, I don't feel confident at all with saying that the 8 teams that made the playoffs last year are going to be the same squads, because I feel pretty good about the Grizzlies making it back into that picture. It feels like the Kings probably should, but like I could take the Clippers out in that conversation and that makes sense, but then who falls out? Is it the Pelicans who just made the big trade? Is it the Lakers with 2 All-NBA level players? Is it the Suns who have gone all in? It's probably not going to be the Mavericks, Timberwolves, Nuggets, or Thunder. It's got to be one of those other teams. I don't know. I have no idea how to solidify my NBA standings. Again, I think I'm getting close. I have sort of an idea, but I really want to know what your opinions are. What do your standings look like at this point in the offseason? If you had to predict today, who would end up in what seed? Who are your 1 seeds? What are your top 8 teams that make the playoffs? Who's in the play-in for you? I'm just really curious to know because I've been agonizing over this, trying to make these predictions because I thought about getting the video up earlier this offseason, but I was like, nah, because I'll wait. I haven't figured it out. That's why I've been waiting. Not because I have some master plan to put it out at the exact perfect time to make predictions. I just don't quite know what to go with. But yeah, those are my thoughts right now on the NBA, why it's so hard to predict. There are so many factors, so many teams that feel like they're destined to rise up but don't quite have the talent of the top teams, but it's not always just the talent. And it feels like there are a lot of like really high profile teams that are just injury prone, whether it's the Suns, it's the Pelicans, it's the Lakers, it's the Grizzlies, the Sixers over in the Eastern Conference. The Bucks feel like they could have big injuries. The Cavs were super beat up last year. So feel like that makes it even more confusing than ever. Teams are resting players, which of course also makes it more confusing to figure it out. But yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts on the NBA standings. Who do you have where going into this upcoming season? And again, my full prediction video will be out on the 15th. I think I'm going to do a stream the day before on that Monday, basically breaking down kind of what I'm thinking right now, getting some of your thoughts. I've got some upcoming sponsors for the season that are going to be really exciting that I also want to talk about with y'all. And one of them is going to allow us to make group predictions, which is going to be featured in the video. So if you want to be a part of that, make sure to check out that stream. Again, I think it's going to be Monday. I feel pretty good about it coming out that day because I mean, I have to get it done before I make my predictions. Otherwise, there's not much point in it. So it'll probably be Monday. Just keep an eye out for that. But yeah, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I'll see y'all later. Again, let me know your predictions. I'm super curious. Real one, say it back. Or that's not what I want you to say. It doesn't matter.